And joining us to talk about the serious situation between Russia and Turkey, we are having Dr. Bulent Aliriza, Director and Senior Associate of the Turkey Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, now based in the United States. And in London, we are joined by Mr. Alexander Nekrassov, a Russian security expert and also former Kremlin advisor. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. First of all, Dr. Aliriza, you're originally coming from Turkey. May I ask you this question? Russia accused Turkey of this shooting down of the Russian warplane as, quote, pre-planned provocation, said by the Russian foreign minister. Do you agree?
Well, that's been denied by the Turkish military as well as by the Turkish president. Today he made a speech in which he said that Turkey did not know the identity of the plane, and that Turkey only discovered that it was a Russian plane after the incident. Now, the causes of the incident, the details are going to come out, but I fear that the two countries are not going to agree on this, and it's what happens after this day, rather than looking back at how it happened, that's going to be, I think, more important.
I see. Mr. Nekrassov, your response to this, as well as the Russian accusation of Turkey of not communicating with Russia after the incident. Many wonder also whether Russia demanded explanation from Turkey directly after the incident at all.
Well, first of all, Russian planes do not pose any danger to the Turkish territory. So it was very strange to hear from the NATO and from Turkey that it was defending its territorial integrity. Excuse me, but this is nonsense. Secondly, decision to order the pilots of the Turkish Air Force to fire at Russian airplanes was obviously taken by NATO. It was a predetermined decision. Turkey would never dare by itself to down a Russian plane. So there was obviously a consultation with Washington and with Brussels, and everybody agreed, let's do it. So in this particular instance, we see a pre-planned action. They used a tiny opportunity. It's ridiculous. The plane was, if by the way,
right,
it's ever entered the Turkish airspace, was there for seconds. So I think it was an outrageous act, and I think Turkey should apologize, and Turkey should stop these provocations.
May I just follow up very briefly with you, 10 seconds if you can, sir. Why would the EU and the NATO and the United States joining Turkey in shooting down Russia's plane when there is a coalition that's urgently needed go against the ISIS, which is regarded as the biggest enemy? Briefly from you, sir, what is the reasoning, do you think?
Are you asking me, sir?
Yes, Mr. Nekrassov. If you said what you have just accused,
well, basically, I think that there is a refusal to actually have a proper coalition in place that would inflict damage on ISIS and on other terrorist groups. That is the only explanation I can give you.
Okay, Mr. Aliriza, there are different ways of expression coming from Russia. One is that the U.S. probably play a role because according to the Russian side, their information, any coalition at this moment doing airstrikes in Syria need to have coordination with the U.S. Military regarding the issue. Do you think that is the case? How complicated do you think this incident really is? What is really the nature of it?
Well, look, if this is a planned, premeditated move, then we're talking about a very, very serious crisis between Washington and Moscow. Now, given the fact that both American and Russian planes are operating in Syrian airspace, and so far they have not had an incident, obviously the military contacts between Washington and Moscow have been sufficient to prevent this kind of incident. Now, even if Turkey apologizes, as your Russian guest says, obviously this is not the end of the matter, because the accusation is that Washington and Brussels, the entire Western alliance, is involved. Now, where I think we need to focus on is on the differences in the Russian approach and the American and Western approach, and of course the Turkish approach to Syria. The Russian government is supporting President Assad and the Syrian government and the Syrian forces, and but that's not something that Washington and the other Western allies have agreed on. Now they're fighting ISIS and the other radical groups, or at least some of the radical groups, and Russia is also fighting them, but they have not yet agreed on a common platform for this, and that's why we have the kind of situation that we saw just yesterday. And we may see it in the future. Until there's an agreement and until there is some degree of coordination, I'm afraid we're going to be at cross purposes and we're going to have problems.
All right. Mr. Aliriza, Dr. Aliriza, I want to ask you this. It's very important. Russia has already pointed out about the so-called function of the, quote, buffer zone proposed by Turkey on the Turkish-Syrian border. Russia said there has been some of the worrisome activities happening over there, and also foreign fighters supporting ISIS over there, as well as the weapon depot of these foreign fighters and oil tanks of these foreign fighters supporting ISIS. What do you think, given your knowledge of Turkey and its border issues, what do you think is really happening over there? Is this buffer zone going to be the key leading to the next stage of discussion, if not debate and for wars?
Well, let's point something out at the very beginning when we talk about the buffer zone. This is something that Turkey has wanted for a long time. They've called it a security belt, they call it a terror-free zone, and frankly, it has not happened because Ankara's Western allies have not agreed to it. What we're really talking about is the area that's not controlled by the Kurds, and that's 96 kilometers between the main Kurdish enclave and the smaller enclave to the west. Now that's an area where the radicals have gone through and have come back into Turkey. Now Turkey is beginning to tighten up on this issue, but it has been found insufficient even by Turkey's Western allies. Now, clearly, now that ISIS has hit Turkish targets, Turkey is taking this issue much more seriously than before. But if you ask me, are we going to have a buffer zone in the near future? I don't think so, because Washington has not agreed on it.
Now, Mr. Nekrassov, Russia has already said it's going to put over there in the province of Latakia the sophisticated weapon defense system, and it has the ability to strike airplanes and some of the other areas across the border. What do you think is going to be the purpose of it? How complicated do you think, Mr. Nekrassov, if Russia put the system over there, and will that prevent future incidents or actually increase the possibility of future incidents?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that I should reply to that statement about President Assad and his future, because it's important. I think we are sort of not moving anywhere until the West and its allies are going to insist on Assad going, as soon as possible. This has to be agreed. We cannot remove the government and the infrastructure which exists there and allow Syria to slide into the same situation as Iraq and Libya have. So I can't really understand this logic that we're saying that America wants Assad out and Russia wants to keep him in.
Right.
Russia wants to keep the status quo for a while, and then politically the Syrian people and diplomatically whatever, but they will decide the future.
Okay,
at
now
the moment it's just bizarre.
Okay, now let's focus on the incident and the aftermath. So what about that specific weapon defense system?
Well, the point is this, that Russia has been succeeding in hitting ISIL targets in Syria. and along with the troops on the ground, Syrian troops on the ground. That is the ideal scenario for a victory over ISIL. Everybody else seems to be not liking this situation. Every time Russia sends any more arms or experts, or for example, like recently a battleship to Syria, everybody immediately says, well, it's an invasion. Russia is going to, stage an invasion, and it's going to take over Syria. This is rubbish. Russia is conducting a specific operation which is targeted at specific targets. And by the way, for a year, the US-led coalition was given the chance to do the same, but they blew it. They didn't achieve anything at all. ISIL was still strong and controlling even more territory.
So did I understand that you don't think there is anything related going to happen with the weapon defense system that Russia is about to deploy in the province of Latakia? What is going to happen with that system, and what does that mean for the other countries also trying to fight ISIS if they are? Very briefly from you, 20 seconds if you can, sir.
Well, the defense system doesn't pose any danger to anyone.
All right.
I find it quite remarkable that people get upset with surface-to-air defense systems as if they can be used, as an attacking weapons.
All right,
This has to be there. That's a proper, military development, deployment.
Let's see what's next, because the incident happened. Both sides do not agree as to what really happened and who should be responsible. And Dr. Aliriza, what's going to happen next? Turkey, after consulting with NATO, not Russia, now finally proposed dialogue. Russia said too late. And there has been no proper communication, as Russia accused Turkey of right after the incident. Russia thinking about doing something to the Turkish airplanes passing the border, and also some of the oil tanks that Russia is likely to block the transport means from Turkey to some of the other places. What do you think is going to happen next? Is a dialogue possible?
Well, there has been some dialogue. The Russian ambassador was called to the Turkish Foreign Ministry yesterday, and the Turkish defense attaché in Moscow was called to the Russian Defense Ministry. But what is worrisome is that the military-to-military dialogue that apparently took place at least on 5 occasions to prevent this kind of thing from happening is now suspended. And given the fact that a Russian plane has been shot down and there is such tension, we have an unpredictable and dangerous situation. Now, the other aspects that you raise as to how Russia might retaliate for the loss of its plane are clearly, some things that need to be talked about. But the fact that Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, who was due to be in Istanbul today for talks with his Turkish counterpart, has cancelled it, is significant because it prevents the kind of dialogue that is absolutely necessary.
All right. Mr. Nekrassov, very briefly from you, I only have a few seconds left. What about that? Russia said no war to go to against Turkey, but at the same time warned about the borders between Syria and Turkey and said Russia wants to seal that border for Syria. What is Russia having in mind? And by the way, one of those navigators on the plane was saved. He is still alive by the Russian and Syrian forces, according to the latest media report. What can be the information he could provide? Mr. Nekrassov.
Well, first of all, I think it's more important to understand that Russia took a calm position and said there will be no retaliation. I think it's crucial, actually. And I also think that dialogue is possible, and it's continuing, and Lavrov is going to talk to the Turkish foreign minister, and I think that basically all sides have to use this tragic incident to realize that they have to cooperate. We cannot continue to have several groupings fighting alongside each other and having different plans and different scenarios. They have to act as one. And this is the whole situation. Russia has been asking for it since the day it started its bombing campaign. It has not been, the West has not responded properly to this. Now things have to change.
All right.
Otherwise, there will be more tragedies and more planes will be falling. And by the way, the situation will be more complicated once Britain joins in, and we will have an overcrowding, in the skies over Syria.
All right.
If we don't have a proper communication at that time and proper control and command system, I think it will be a disaster.
Sir, if you can, 10 seconds, what can be happening to that navigator saved by the Russian and Syrian forces, according to the latest media report? What information do you think he could provide to help us understand the real situation?
Well, he obviously will provide a lot of information, valuable information, where the plane was, and we will know where it was hit and brought down.
Right.
And I think he can also provide us with information what happened after, when they bail out, because when those so-called moderate rebels started shooting both of the pilots in the sky,
right,
which is outrageous, by the way.
All right, Alexander Nekrassov joining us from London, originally from Russia, and Dr. Bulent Aliriza joining us from Washington, D.C., originally from Turkey. Thank you so much, gentlemen.